You finally got that which you had always wanted. It felt so amazing, bliss, literally. But just a couple of days later, you're already chasing the next thing. Sound familiar? Now imagine this. A king steals his 20-year-old son's youth so he can keep chasing pleasure. Not for a week, not for a year, for 1,000 years. Still, at the end, having enjoyed everything the world could offer, he says, I have never been satisfied. Not once, not even for a moment. This is the story of King Yayati. Stay on and you'll see why the fire inside you grows stronger every time you feed it, and what it takes to finally let it go.
Yayati wasn't just wealthy. He was a Chakravarti, emperor of the entire world. His palaces stretched across continents. His treasury overflowed with gold that could buy nations. His armies never lost. When he made a decision, no one questioned it. He had everything a human could want. But here's what the ancient texts understood about desire. It doesn't care what you have. It only cares about what you don't have yet. And one afternoon, while hunting in the forest, Yayati heard a scream. Not an animal, human, female, desperate. He found an old well and peered into the darkness. And at the bottom, drowning, was Devayani, daughter of the most powerful sage in the world. Yayati didn't hesitate. He reached down and pulled her out. Their hands touched. Yayati felt it immediately. Desire, connection, something pulling him towards her. But she was Brahmin, the highest spiritual caste. He was Kshatriya, a warrior. The tradition forbade it.
But Devayani held his hand and said, You saved me. We're bound now. And that changed everything. But why was she in that well? Her Sakhi, Sharmishta, had thrown her in rage after Devayani called her unworthy to touch a Brahmin's garments. Yayati and Devayani got married. But her father, Shukracharya, the sage whose curses could end kingdoms, had only one absolute condition. Never touch Sharmishta. If you do so, you will know suffering. But who was this Sharmishta? The woman who threw Devayani into that well was the daughter of a demon king, now serving as Devayani's maidservant. A devastating fall from royalty to servitude, a punishment for a mindless act. Yayati swore the oath. He promised, but promises made in daylight have a way of dissolving in shadow. Years passed. Devayani was difficult, high maintenance, temperamental. Sharmishta, the servant, the enemy, was graceful, quiet, always present. Devayani had children. Sharmishta had nothing. One evening, Sharmishta came to him. I am of royal blood. My youth is ending. I don't ask to be your wife. I just don't let me die childless. Yayati remembered his oath, the curse, the consequences. And then he looked at her, and his resistance dissolved. He broke his promise. For years, no one knew. While Devayani had 2 sons, Sharmishta had 3. The palace thrived, the kingdom prospered. Until one day, Devayani saw her maidservant's children playing in the garden, and she saw her husband's face in theirs. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just walked out, went home to her father. When Shukracharya heard what had happened, he didn't ask questions, didn't want explanations. He just said one sentence, May old age seize you right now. And Yayati's body collapsed. His skin shriveled, his hair whitened, his back bent. In 5 seconds, he aged 75 years. The emperor of the world became a broken old man. Yayati fell to his knees, begging, Please, I haven't satisfied my desires yet. I'm not done. Give me more time. Think about that. A man who ruled the entire world, had everything, and he's begging for more time to satisfy his desires. Shukracharya's anger softened just slightly at his daughter's tears. The curse cannot be revoked, but if one of your sons gives you his youth, you can have it. So Yayati summoned his 5 sons. Will any of you give me your youth? The first son said, No, I want to enjoy my life.
The second said no. Old age is suffering. The third said, no, I haven't lived yet. The fourth said, no, this is your curse, not mine. Then the youngest, Puru, barely 20 years old, stepped forward. I'll do it, father. Take my youth. The exchange happened instantly. Puru's body bent, his hair whitened, his skin aged, and Yayati became young again. He looked at his restored body and said, now I can satisfy my desires. That was year 1. Year 50, still chasing. Year 200, still wanting. Year 500, still hungry. Year 900, still empty. For 1,000 years he had everything the world could offer, every pleasure, every experience, every sensation a human could imagine. The ancient text describes it with one image. Desire is never extinguished by enjoyment. Like fire fed with ghee, it only grows stronger. This was Yayati's life for a millennium. He fed the fire again and again, and the fire grew. On year 1000, something shifted. Yayati woke up, not from sleep, but from delusion. He looked at himself in the mirror, still young, still strong, and he realized, I stole 1,000 years from my son, and I'm not satisfied, not even a little, not even once. I've had everything, and I'm still hungry. He confessed to Devyani, I have become a complete slave to my senses. I used my son's youth for 1,000 years and never experienced satisfaction. Not once, not even for a moment. How far I have fallen. In that moment of devastating clarity, Yayati understood. The problem wasn't that he didn't have enough. The problem was the having itself. No amount of gold could fill what was empty within. No pleasure could satisfy what was infinitely hungry. So he stopped. Yayati called Puru and gave him back his youth. He divided his empire among his 5 sons, but to Puru he gave the throne. You were willing to sacrifice, so you get everything. Then Yayati took off his crown, walked away from the palace and went into the forest. No servants, no gold, no pleasures, just him, the trees, and silence. The man who spent 1,000 years chasing satisfaction spent his final years eating roots and meditating on the divine, and for the first time in his life, after giving up everything, he found what he'd been searching for all along, not satisfaction of desire, but freedom from it. The fire that consumed him for 1,000 years finally went out, not because he fed it, but because he stopped. And that's where Yayati's story ends and yours begins. You've never cursed your son to old age, but you've absolutely done what Yayati did. You got the phone, then wanted the upgrade. You hit the milestone, then moved the goalpost. You moved into your dream home, then scrolled listings again. That's not ambition, that's Yayati's fire, and it's burning you out the exact same way. But you can practice one aspect of his final wisdom, recognizing the pattern before it steals 1,000 years. Let's see where this matters most, in the place where the fire burns hottest for most people, career and achievements. You worked for months to hit that target, late nights, sacrifices, stress. Finally you hit it. Promotion, raise, recognition. Feels incredible for 48 hours. Then your brain whispers, but what about the next level? What about that other person who's ahead? And suddenly the achievement you bled for feels empty. Here's the trap Yayati lived. Success doesn't satisfy, it just raises the baseline. You think, when I get X, I'll be happy. You get X. You're happy for a weekend. Then X becomes the new normal, and now you need Y. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. Yayati called it his curse. But here's what he discovered in that forest after giving up everything. The joy you're chasing externally has been inside you the entire time, not as a metaphor, but as a reality. When you do something for the pure love of it, not for validation, not for the outcome, but because it connects you to something deeper, that's when you touch the divine within you. That's what the ancient texts mean when they say, God dwells within, not in rituals, but in the joy you feel when you're fully present with what you're doing. Oprah Winfrey, the media icon and philanthropist, discovered this too. She said, the greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude. Not by getting more, not by achieving more, by changing how you relate to what you already have, by finding the joy in the process, not just the result. So here's the practice. Once a month, do something you love, purely for the joy of it. Not to post about it, not to track progress, not to build a skill. Paint, write, play music, cook, walk in nature. Do it because something in you comes alive when you do it. That aliveness, that's not a feeling, that's recognition. You're recognizing the God within you. And when you connect to that, you stop needing external validation to feel whole. Let me show you how this works at the highest level. Jimmy Donaldson, Mr. Beast, started making YouTube videos in 2012 when he was 13 years old. For 4 years, almost nobody watched. His videos got 20 views, maybe 100 if he was lucky. Most people would have quit after 4 months. He kept going for 4 years. Why? Not because he was chasing subscribers, not because he had a strategy, because he loved making videos. In an early interview, he said, "I would edit for 10 hours straight and not even realize time was passing. I just loved it." That's the key. He wasn't doing it to get something. He was doing it because it connected him to something. The joy wasn't in the result. It was in the creating itself. In 2017, 1 million subscribers. He could have celebrated and coasted. Instead, he started giving away money. $10,000 to a homeless person. Then 100,000. Then 1 million. Not as a strategy, because it brought him joy. By 2023, he had over 200 million subscribers. One of the biggest creators on earth. But you know what he said in a recent podcast? "I still wake up stressed about numbers. But the moment I start filming, I forget all that. I'm just having fun again. That's why I do this." Even at 200 million, the fire still burns if he focuses on the numbers. But when he reconnects to the joy, the love of creating, the love of giving, the love of the process, the fire goes quiet. That's not ambition. That's connection to the divine within. Mr. Beast didn't need 1,000 years to realize what Yayati realized. He found it the moment he stopped creating for validation and started creating from joy. And the irony, the moment he stopped chasing and started loving, that's when everything exploded. That's the pattern Yayati discovered after a millennium. When you do something for the love of it, you're already complete. The fire can't burn what's already whole. In the Bollywood film Gurukant Desai builds a massive business empire. Wealth, power, influence, everything. His wife asks him one question: when will it be enough? He has no answer. Because there is no enough when you're feeding the fire. At the end, he's won everything, but he's alone, sick, and still hungry. That's Yayati at year 999. Now contrast that with Swadesh. Mohan Bhargava is a NASA scientist living in America. Career, comfort, success. Then he visits his childhood village in India, sees people without electricity, without clean water, and something shifts. He gives up NASA, gives up America, returns to the village. Not because he has to, because something in him comes alive when he's solving real problems for real people. No salary like NASA, no prestige, just a village and a generator. But watch his face at the end. He's building a water project with the villagers. He's found what Guru never could. One is Yayati feeding the fire for 1,000 years, chasing satisfaction. The other is Yayati in the forest, finally free because he stopped chasing and started being. Let's take another example. In the film 3 Idiots, there are 2 students. Chatur, obsessed with grades, salary, status. He graduates, becomes vice president of a company, makes millions. But when we meet him 10 years later, he's still competing, still comparing, still chasing. Then there's Rancho, who studied for the love of learning. No pressure, no chasing. 10 years later, he's a teacher in Ladakh, simple house, no wealth, but he's built 400 patents, teaching kids, living with joy. Same education, different approach. One fed the fire for 10 years, one stopped feeding it from day one. Guess which one is free?
Yayati's final achievement, moksha, complete liberation, merger with the divine, is the ultimate spiritual realization. It may take lifetimes to reach that peak, but we can still practice the one aspect of Yayati's realization that's most relevant right now: love, joy, connection, the divine within. You don't need to renounce the world to touch what Yayati found. You don't need to meditate for decades in a forest. You just need to do what you do, your work, your relationships, your daily life, from that place of inner joy. When Mr. Beast creates because he loves creating, that's him practicing Yayati's realization. When Rancho teaches with love for children in Ladakh, that's him touching the same divine Yayati merged with. When you do anything purely for the joy of it, not to get something, but because it connects you to something deeper, you're practicing the same truth. Yayati reached the peak of the mountain. He got moksha. But you and I, we can still walk the path. We can still feel the altitude changing. Every moment of genuine joy, every act of love without expectation, every time you choose presence over pursuit, that's you connecting to the God within. Not the full realization, but the practice. And in our times, in our world, that practice lifts us higher. Each act of genuine joy, each moment of selfless love, it raises our consciousness, brings us closer to the divine, moves us towards that same ultimate state, step by step. So here we are, back where we started. King Yayati, 1000 years, one impossible lesson. But you know what stays with me most? It's not the curse, it's not even the realization. It's that moment when Kuru stepped forward, a 20-year-old kid looking at his father, the most powerful man in the world, and choosing to bear his burden. That's the part of you that can watch yourself reaching for your phone at 3 a.m. and ask, what am I actually looking for? Not your discipline, not your willpower, your awareness. The part that sees the pattern and chooses differently. The part that knows, I don't need more to feel whole. The joy I am chasing is already here. So here's what you do tomorrow. Before you reach for your phone in the morning, take 3 breaths. That's it. Not meditation, not some grand spiritual practice. Just 3 breaths where you're not consuming anything, where you're not chasing anything, where you're just present. That's your Kuru moment. That's when you stop being Yayati and start being free. And then, do one thing today purely for the joy of it. Cook a meal with love. Write something no one will read. Play music to your heart's content. Walk outside and actually notice the trees. If this story shifted something in you, hit that like button and subscribe for more ancient wisdom translated for modern life. And if you want to go deeper into these timeless stories, there's a book called Bhagavatam Light, Riding the Waves of Timeless Wisdom, Volume 1. It's on Amazon. Links in the description. See you soon.